Beautiful. So interoception. Well, before interoception, some of you, are new to who I am, but I'm a physio who's kind of gone a little rogue and just really found that this model of kind of symptom management, which is the way that the healthcare system is really kind of built, set of symptoms, you get a diagnosis, you get a treatment, just kind of continue to fall flat in my experience. These kind of more complex presentations, when we're talking about things like chronic fatigue or chronic pain or stress related issues, managing the symptoms wasn't the idea, right? Like the suppression of symptoms or the elimination of symptoms never sat well with me. I've always been more oriented towards addressing the root cause. For a long time, that was addressing the root cause of health. And then I realized that was part of the problem as well. So I really now think of this as a root cause approach to health rather than root cause of disease. When we start to establish what is the root cause of health, oftentimes biology becomes healthy. It's in our nature, right? Like we are designed to be healthy and vital. And oftentimes there are things in the way. And so that shift has kind of taken me predominantly, the primary tool I continue to see being most effective is breathing. Breathing is obviously very broad. When we say that word, it kind of means everything, right? Everything we're doing is impacting our breath, right? We can intentionally use it, but it's also kind of humming away in the background. And as part of that, right, it really kind of just opened up my understanding of the nervous system. And so the nervous system, from my perspective and the way I like to teach, is really the operating system, right? It's what's running the show in the background. And it's deciding, what functions we should be prioritizing, what functions we not, where we should be allocating resources, what should we shut down and what should we turn on. So the nervous system is receiving all of this information and it's putting together a picture of the world. The primary question the nervous system is asking is, am I safe or am I not? Right? At a fundamental level, all of the information that it's gathering, it is wanting to determine, am I safe or am I not? Because from that question, right, we have two different pathways. If I'm not safe, right, there are certain things that I need to do to get safe. And if I am safe, there are certain things that I can do, right, to maintain my safety. And so this fundamental question of am I safe or not, right, feeds into what we're talking about today, right, is this topic of interoception. And so interoception is really the inner awareness, what's going on inside my body. Now, we're going to break this down in a few different ways today, not just to give us this idea of like, oh, it's just feeling my feelings or feeling my body. It's what interpretation am I making from that information? And then how can I act upon that, right, to change the outcome? And so one of the most common kind of misconceptions I see with interoception is it's just about having the awareness of what is happening in my body. Oh, my heart's racing. Oh, my stomach is in a knot. Oh, I'm feeling tense. I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm tired, whatever it might be. And that's layer one, right? Yes, tuning in and noticing those things is hugely important. But if we then don't do anything with it, we're stuck in this kind of like awareness without change. And this can be a bit of a trap for people because now all I'm doing is I'm focusing on the fact that my heart is racing, the fact that I'm feeling a little bit anxious. And now I hyper attune to that and I amplify it because we didn't take this next step of like, what does this information mean and what can I do with it? And so I want to kind of upgrade everyone's understanding away from interoception just simply being, right, sensing what's happening in the body and actually making sense of what's happening in the body, right? That little shift away from just like, here's information to what am I doing with this information? How is my mind constructing what this information means? And then what can I do about that? So we're going to kind of go through, I'll jump between just like me chatting to you guys. I do have some slides, my little whiteboard. I really like to draw as I teach. I think it helps with understanding. Again, if you're on a phone, I'm not sure if you can see the whiteboard, but once you get the recording, you'll have the whiteboard with it as well. I'll also be sending you a little bit of a kind of a cheat sheet of like, here are the really important points that we covered. Here's what you can take away as an individual or a practitioner. Because my goal is not, after 60 minutes, everyone goes, wow, that was a great workshop. And then they carry on. I want you to implement this today, tomorrow, next week, next month, right? Otherwise, it's kind of a waste of time. Not a waste of time. It's a bit, blunt, but like the value is going to come from you actually implementing this stuff, right? For yourself or with your clients. And it is in that implementation that we actually get the kind of return of investment, if that makes sense. So interoception, in and of itself, I really like to reference it as kind of a meta skill, right? A meta skill means it's a skill that builds up other skills. So many of you are probably here either, right, to get better at emotional regulation, right? How do I better navigate my emotions? Whether that's depression, anxiety, anger, irritability, right? Like this full spectrum. Or you might be on the side of like nervous system regulation, right? I think these two things just tie into each other really nicely. But most people I encounter interested in interoception are actually interested in how do I work with my feelings a little bit better? Or how do I work with my nervous system a little bit better? If you're on the internet today, nervous system regulation is this huge buzz right now, right? Nervous system dysregulation, regulation, right? Without interoception, nervous system regulation is guesswork. So that's why this is a workshop on interoception and not emotional regulation or nervous system regulation, because I find those two things, which we're going to talk about, are built on top of this skill of interoception. Can I make sense of what is happening in my body? If not, right, it's kind of like throwing stuff at the dartboard with a blindfold on and hoping you hit the bullseye, right? The amount of times that you'll hear clients saying, well, I just don't know what I need. Do I need a nap or a coffee or an ice bath or a sauna, or should I exercise? Should I do yoga? Like, I don't really know what I need. That to me is telling us, well, I've kind of like lost this line of communication with my body. We're going to talk about some of the really common problems. But before we kind of dive into that, I just want to kind of highlight something, right? If we zoomed into one little nerve here, well, not little, but everyone's heard of the vagus nerve. I'm sure if you're on this call, you've heard of the vagus nerve, right? The vagus nerve being this big kind of super highway that takes information predominantly from the body to the brain, right? Kind of new anatomical and like dissection research is coming out to show that 80% of the vagus nerve is going from the body to the brain, right? 80%. Only 20% is going from the brain to the body. So the vagus nerve is much more a source of information that my brain is using to determine what is the appropriate state for me to be in. And so I'm going to come back to this concept a couple of times, that interoception, right, is not just me kind of like waiting for information. And my brain goes, oh, I'm anxious, or, oh, I'm tired, right? Really important concept that I don't think a lot of people get is that this is also kind of a predictive process, right? My nervous system is always making guesses about the environment as to what's the right state for me to be in, right? And it's using this kind of feedback loop, right, to determine, did I get it right, right? Was that shift in my state, my level of arousal appropriate? And so if we more think of, rather than just interoception being the receiving of information, interoception is a feedback loop. It's allowing my nervous system to determine whether or not it is accurate. So if we think of a few things through this lens, anxiety is a prediction that something could be wrong. It is oftentimes not something is wrong, okay? So when someone notices my heart's starting to race and there's tension or constriction in my throat, right? The nervous system is predicting, right, that something bad could happen. A conversation I'm about to have. I'm going to see my boss. My work's going to get checked. I have to talk to my daughter or my son. It's like, and the nervous system is taking this information and going, oh, this could be a little bit challenging, scary, right? And so it's generating context, right? This is anxiety. But that is a feedback loop that continues to run. Now, what often happens is if I don't have this kind of interoceptive capacity of like, hey, my heart's racing and I'm breathing kind of fast and I'm feeling a little bit anxious, we will misattribute, right? Oh, this means something bad is going to happen, which will continue to ramp up my nervous system, which now I breathe faster and shallower, and those signals get amplified. And the nervous system is now getting this kind of predictive error. It's like confirmation that something is wrong, right? When actually the trigger of that might have just been something completely benign, right? If we call the heart rate increasing, right, many people will ascribe that to, this is me experiencing anxiety. But it also happens when people experience excitement. There's just different context, right? It's like, I can't wait to go on this roller coaster. I can't wait to go on this trip. I'm really excited. The heart racing is not a problem because the context is different, right? The interpretation or the prediction is different. And so interoception isn't just us getting better at noticing all of the signals from the body. It's being able to attribute meaning to those signals, right? We're going to talk about why so many people have a problem with that, right? We're going to talk about a few different challenges in the 21st century. But before we kind of dive into that, again, I just want to like point out a couple of things about interoception. It sounds like this kind of like foreign concept to a lot of people. These are pretty random pictures on the screen. But if we think of the language that we tend to use, I've got butterflies in my stomach. My heart skipped a beat, right? There are knots in my stomach. There's a frog in my throat, right? Like we use language to describe what's happening in our body. This is interoception. So I'm not presenting this as like a skill that you don't have that you need to learn, right? It's something that's already happening that we can actually just get better at. And so this idea that interoception is a trainable skill is one, heavily supported by research, right? We can improve our interoceptive capacity through training. But number two, right, is not something you have or you don't have, right? It's something that you learn to do really well or you didn't learn to do really well. Maybe trauma, maybe stress, maybe sedentary lifestyle, maybe overstimulate. Like there's all these factors that may reduce your ability to listen and interpret and make sense of what is happening in your body. But you're not broken, right? We see challenges with interoception. The two most common is I hyper attribute, right? It's like every time I notice that little shift, right, my heart rate increased, I'm having a heart attack. That little bit of tension in my head is a brain tumor, right? It's like we over attribute. Every little thing is catastrophic, or we under attribute. I skipped my meals because I didn't realize I was hungry. I stayed up way past my bedtime because I didn't realize I was tired, right? I pushed myself really hard with exercise because I didn't notice I was fatigued and on the edge of burnout and perhaps maybe really close to picking up a little injury. So this kind of swing of like people either over attribute or under attribute, right? What's happening in their body. But if we kind of consider this concept that on one end of this spectrum is interoception, and the other end of the spectrum is exteroception, right? Exteroception is what I can see. Oh, you're gonna guys get to see how great my drawing is, my ears, right? What I can touch and what I can taste, right? Our five senses. Wait, which one have I missed? Sight, smell, a little nose, right? So the five senses is really how I sense the external world, right? Our nervous system is attuned on the exteroceptive side through my five primary senses, right? Information coming in from the outside world, what I can see, smell, taste, touch, feel, okay? But there's this other process going on that is interoceptive. What is happening inside my body, right? Again, we've got the vagus nerve, right? This big long nerve that comes up to the brain and brings all this information. But we also have things called baroreceptors, which is just a fancy word for checking pressure, right? We have stretch receptors. We have proprioceptors. We have all these different like special cell types in the body that their job is to collect information from the body and send it to the brain, right? When I take a big breath, right, my lungs have inflated. There's all these little pressure receptors sending information to my brain saying my lungs are full, right? My rib cage is open, my posture, right? That is sending a really different message to if I breathe all the air out, now those pressure receptors are firing a different message being like, we're empty. That is going to create a different interpretation from the brain. So what I want everyone to understand is that we've both got information coming from the outside world and the information coming from the inside world. And because this is a spectrum, when I become more exteroceptive, when I'm attuned more to the external world, I am less attuned to the internal world, right? The more I'm focused out here, the less I'm focused in here. Why is this a problem? If you think of the 21st century, the notifications, the buzzers, the dings, right? The social media, the news, almost every input, right? Every stimulus is pulling our attention outward. The billboards, the signs, the news, the media, like everything. Now, I'm not going to let the conspiracy pessimist in me out today, right? That is this by design or is this by chance, right? But the fact that all of our attention is pulled outward means it's much harder for us to experience what is happening in our body because of this spectrum, right? Again, it is not a fault, right? I am either focusing on the external world or the internal world, and I cannot be both at the same time. right? If you're a monk that meditates in a cave, you'll probably develop capacity with both ends of the spectrum. But typically, we are either on the exteroceptive side, I'm pulled out there, or the interoceptive side, I'm focused in here. The key thing I want to understand here is that this is a trainable skill. We're not trying to say we want to make someone less of something and more of something else. We want to open up their capacity to move between these states. Oh, I'm hyper focused on my back pain, right? Would it be useful for you to be able to move your focus, your attention, right? So we need to be less interoceptive and more exteroceptive in that moment. That would require me tuning into what I can hear, what I can see, what can I use in terms of tactile or pressure, right? We can start to influence where we are on this spectrum, right? I miss all the cues from my body because I'm attached to my phone, or it's like, cool, we need to kind of train up that inner awareness so you can pick up on your hunger cues. You know when you're tired, you know not when to push yourself, when it's going to flare up your chronic fatigue, right? This is a lack of inner awareness. And so our job is to kind of almost get better at both and see where we are on the spectrum, right? To determine where we need to go. So interoception, right, is not just information, it is making sense of information. And we can move between external focus and internal focus. The next thing I kind of want to just touch on is like, why does interoception exist before we get to kind of these challenges? Why do we have the ability to sense what's happening in our body, right? The interoception is kind of processed by two primary brain areas. One is the insula, and insula is kind of like, it's this switchboard, right? Like all the information's coming up, and then the insula decides where in the brain am I kind of sending this information. So it gathers all this information and then kind of decides what to do with it, right? The other is a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. And no one needs to remember these parts of the brain or the like neuroanatomy, but kind of just understanding where this comes from, right? The anterior cingulate cortex is heavily involved in like, what should I do? What action should I take, right? What should I do right now based on the information? Why do we have this, right? Well, why would we feel hungry? If our blood sugar drops and then I feel hunger, what is hunger designed to do, right? It is designed to get me to take action, find some food, right? I'm talking kind of evolutionary here, but like, why do we have the capacity to feel hunger? Well, when our blood sugars drop, when we're low on resources, we need to be driven to go and find some more resources, right? So that blood sugar drop, I feel, right, as hunger, and that hunger drives me to take an action. My heart rate spikes, right? Well, I feel fear or anxiety or excitement, right? My body feels cold. I feel the urge to get warm. I need to grab a jumper. I need to sit by the fire, right? I'm overstimulated. The tabs in my brain are open, right? I might notice a sense of overwhelm or fatigue, right? Or distractibility. These things are not just there as like raw information. They're actually designed to get us to take an action, right? So interoception, again, is not just this raw information that I'm now aware of. Oh, cool. It's super beneficial to me to be more aware of my heart racing. Most people with anxiety would be like, that is not helpful, right? But what is the racing heart designed to get me to do, right? Is there an action I can take to alleviate, right, why this symptom, if we're going to call it that, or prompt, is actually present? And so our job is not just to, again, be more aware of what's happening. It's to be able to get more precise with what we should do about it, right? And this is really this concept of self-regulation. It is not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? It is really finding what works for me. So we're going to go through a model today of like, well, how do I get better at taking this information and then applying a certain tool or intervention and then checking the feedback loop? Did it work, right? What this feeds into is a pattern recognition, right? Oh, I recognize that my chest always gets tight before I talk to this person, go into this meeting, do this thing. And I've tested that when my chest gets tight, instead of this being anxiety and I'm going to fail, it's my body preparing. And when I slow my exhale and relax my shoulders, that tension abates, right? It's like now we're using the information to do something rather than we've just got more information. Is that clear for everyone? Because it's a really important point, right? My goal today is not just to make people more aware of their body. That is a double-edged sword. Yes, there's a lot of benefits to that if used the right way. but it can also throw people into the hyper awareness of everything that's happening in their body. And if they lean on the contextual side of like, and this means I'm broken, and this means this is a dysfunction, a disease, a diagnosis, a disorder, like that is only going to amplify that response. Cool. Why do we have these challenges, right? Why do so many people struggle with interoception, right? We want to kind of think of, number one is learned, okay? Culturally, socially, I can only speak for myself, right? But if we paint with these broad brushstrokes, right? Keep calm, carry on. Don't cry. Hold it all in. Don't be weak, right? All these little like throwaways that we probably learned as children, right? We're all different ages here, but probably picked up some cultural conditioning that I keep my feelings in here. I don't let it out. It might be a sign of weakness, right? So we learn to ignore or suppress what's going on in my body. Now, this can be amplified if I've grown up in an abusive family relationship, right? When I feel my feelings, I get yelled at by my caregiver. Well, now my feelings become a source of pain and threat, right? So it's not just like, I got to try not to, it's like these things are dangerous. Me feeling my feelings results in me getting hurt, me being in pain, me being, it's like whatever might have happened in that relationship. So very early on, people can develop a relationship, if we want to call it that, a dysfunctional relationship with the information that's coming from their body, right? Not just I ignore it, but I'm actually scared of it. It signifies danger, right? Our nervous system learns, right? So a lot of the time, there's plenty of research on this 0 to 7 years being a very suggestive time, right? We are learning, we are modeling. Like, it's so interesting when you look at developmental neurobiology, right? Scary way of just saying like how our brains grow. But we are born not fully formed and conditioned, right? Our brain is like, okay, so once I get into the world, now I really begin to learn. Most other mammals, most other animals on this earth kind of come out ready to go. It's plug and play, we're born, and they just start navigating the environment. We come in as this incredibly vulnerable, right? Plastic modeling thing. It's like, so I'm learning all these things, even if they're not formally taught to me. I'm learning how to manage my emotions by how I see mom or dad or caregiver, right? They suppress. If we don't talk about it, if there's no open conversation, then that's what I learn. And so many of you, myself included, right? It's like, I learned to manage my emotions in my 30s because it wasn't taught to me really. And again, not holding my parents to blame for this. It's just like, well, they probably weren't taught it by their parents. And it's this generational kind of throwback of like, oh, wait, this is a really, really important skill for us all to possess. Maybe we should start teaching people, right? And that's really why I'm putting this workshop together. So number one, we learn, right, to ignore, suppress, avoid, or even be scared of what is happening in our body, right? Number two is we kind of touched on this, but the external pull, right? We are more distracted. We are less focused. Our attention is just pulled in all these different places. Interoception, right, requires the ability to sit with your body for longer than a couple of seconds. People's attention spans today are so fractured because they're checking their phone 50 times a day, right? They're logging on the email. Like, there's all these things. The analogy that I use here, it's like, imagine you were trying to read a book, but you could only spend 2 seconds on each page. How much would you get out of that book, right? Like, yeah, you'd finish the book, but you would not be able to tell anyone anything about that book, right? So we can't expect to be able to pick up on this wealth of information coming from our body if we can't sit for longer than 5 seconds to receive the information, right? People's attention spans have been trained to be short, right? And this like immediate response. And so we're always looking for the next thing. You ask many people to sit down, be still, and notice what's happening in their body, and they fidget and they're agitated, and they're like, I got to call my mom, I got to turn the oven off, I got to clean the house. And it's like, da, 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 da. And that is what they're used to, right? That is their nervous system that is used to this level of stimulus and input, and it's seeking that, right? So again, this is something that we have to train our ability to pick up on the information that is there. It is not a click your fingers, now I'm better at it. It's something I have to practice. And that sometimes requires us to change some of our habits. Like maybe I need to spend a little less time on my phone, or maybe I need to have clearer boundaries of times that I'm not overstimulated, right? And I am tuning into my body, right? So the world is designed to pull our attention outwards, which when we come back to this kind of spectrum, the more outwards my attention, the less inwards my attention, right? This kind of ties into the same thing that we're distracted, right? The final thing, which we just briefly touched on, with this idea of stress and trauma. Stress, I want us to kind of come back again, right? So there's interoception, exteroception. When I'm stressed, and stressed is a very generic term, but stress causes me to move more into that kind of sympathetic part of my nervous system. The more sympathetic nervous system, the more external my focus. Why? Well, for about 4 million years, threats always came from out there. Okay? The tiger, the predator, the warring tribe, the fire, the famine, right? It is out there. So my HPA axis, right, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, or just like my stress response, when that kicks in, I go out. The problem is likely coming from out there. But when we remember, the more out I go, the less in I go. So now let's play this picture out that someone's been in a period of high stress for months, years, decades. How good are they at sensing the inner landscape? They are very bad at it, right? Not because they're broken, because their system has just been continually, chronically pulled outward looking for threat, right? Stress causes me to go in that mode of vigilance and threat detection. My fight or flight response, I'm preparing for what could happen, right? It is all out there. And so the more you use something, right, the stronger it gets. The less you use something, the weaker it gets. And so if we just think about this like a muscle, right? Our interoceptive muscle for a lot of people has not been to the gym in a while. Our exteroceptive muscle, my senses out there, my external focus has been getting worked out long and hard every day. And so we're at this point where a lot of people have almost been trained out of awareness of their own body because their attention has been pulled into the external world, right? Trauma, as we kind of touched on, we can talk of the big T and the little t trauma, right? But the big T, something big, cataclysmic, bad happens, right? Oftentimes, the nervous system response here, right? The fight, flight, freeze is people learn to dissociate from their body because it is a source of pain, right? Someone was abused and they couldn't get away, they couldn't fight back, they couldn't run. Oftentimes, that nervous system will go into a protective shutdown. There is a literal disconnection between the mind and the body, right? The brain and the body, because we're trying to preserve ourselves. You know, the example that you can often see in nature, right, is if you ever see a cat catch a mouse and the mouse is playing dead because it's about to get eaten alive by a cat, right? And then mom or dad comes home and the cat runs away, the mouse gets up, shakes itself off and runs away, right? That freeze response of playing dead was, I can't fight back against the cat, it's too big. I can't run away, it caught me. There's nothing else to do. So the safest thing is to not be here when the trauma happens, right? If I'm about to get eaten by the cat, probably best I'm not fully aware of it happening. That's a really kind of morbid example, right? But just to kind of paint why this freeze response can happen and where this level of disconnection can start, right? If someone has been subject to abuse, their body becomes a source of fear and pain, and it is a protective mechanism, not a dysfunction, that they can't feel their body, right? So this requires a little bit of a different approach, but gradually reconnecting with the body under safe conditions is how we start to restore and make meaning of what's happening in my body, even though it's been kind of like distorted by trauma, right? No one is broken forever. The nervous system never loses its ability to adapt. And so this is about kind of choosing our entry point of how we can restore this sense of feeling what's happening in my body without fear, right? Without it being a source of pain. I love this analogy here, and it's not my quote. I've just used it. But first the body whispers, and then it taps you on the shoulder, and then it slaps you in the face. Anyone heard that quote or a version of that quote, right? Basically what it's saying in my mind is it's telling us about interoception, right? A lot of people don't know how to listen to the whispers. That little bit of tension in my back the last couple of days I woke up, right? I'm not listening to the whispers. I'm not changing my behavior. I'm not doing anything about it. So then my body taps me. My back pain's kind of flaring up a little bit. I'm actually experiencing pain now, but busy, got to finish my job, got to sit at my desk, got to do the things, don't have time to manage that. Slap in the face. I bulge a disc, I slip a disc, I have a spasm, and I'm really now in trouble, right? Like that is the slap in the face. The amount of times, right? My career as a physio where people come in, they're just like, just out of the blue, I just blew my knee out. I'm like, really? Right? Out of this back pain just like came out of nowhere. Like, let's see about that, right? And almost 100% of the time, right? We have a bit of a conversation. You're like, you know what? Yeah, like I have been feeling a little stiff lately. And I did notice that little niggle in my feet. It's like there's all of these preceding signs, these little whispers, these little taps on the shoulders that either people have ignored, suppressed, avoided, missed, right? That they get slapped in the face. And again, instead of seeing this as like a dysfunction from the body, this is a true protective mechanism, right? The body's just trying to stop us in our tracks so we don't continue to burn ourselves out. And so the idea of early awareness leading to early intervention, right? The sooner I pick something up, the easier it is for me to do something about it. This is a really like key concept here. I just want to kind of zoom out for a little bit. Oh, why is my pen not working? Is it going to work? Oh, there we are. Right? So if we just think, there's this concept called homeostasis in the body, which we're just going to, visualize as a straight road. Between these 2 points, my body is in balance and it's functioning well. Now, I want you to imagine you're driving from point A to point B on a straight road. If you start to veer off course, right, the sooner you pick that up, the easier it is for you to get back on course, right? Everyone would agree with that. It's like the moment I noticed I made a wrong turn and I corrected that, I'm back on track. Yeah? Now, what happens if I don't notice anything till I'm over here, right? It now requires a lot more work, time, energy, effort, resources to get back to on track, right? Back to homeostasis. So this idea of like early awareness leading to early intervention, right? The sooner I pick up, hey, my heart rate just picked up. Hey, I just noticed my breathing climb up into my chest. Hey, I'm picking up on that kind of like tension in my gut. If I pick up on those things quickly, the course correction is very easy, right? Because we haven't veered that far off course. It's far easier to point myself back in the right direction and get back on track because I was aware of the sign that I'm veering off course early, right? If I ignore, oh, my chest, breathing just got higher in my chest, my heart rate's picking up, carry on, right? Now I'm starting to breathe shallow and that's driving my heart rate. But now there's a change in my brain waves, my blood pressure's going up. It's like panic attack. Anyone that's experienced a panic attack or have clients that experience panic attacks, to return from or in the middle of a panic attack to restore baseline is a challenge. It is not easy. When someone is having a panic attack is the worst time to try and not have a panic attack, right? With the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, right? This buildup is there, it crosses a threshold, and now there's a very different management strategy required to get someone back. But 60 minutes before that panic attack, we've got good, ample evidence to show that up to 60 minutes before someone has a panic attack, there are obvious signs: change in respiratory rate, change in temperature, change in heart rate, right? Change in breathing rhythm. They don't notice those things, right? So they're 60 minutes off course, bang, have a panic attack. And it's very, very difficult to manage that. If that person was like, just noticed my heart rate pick up, just noticed my breathing got shallow, and manage that right now, maybe they avoid having a panic attack completely, right? The accurate reading of what's going on in my body allows us to give an accurate response, right? So again, this is not just I noticed, it's what can I do about it? But the amount of pain that someone can save themselves by picking up on the subtle thing before the obvious thing, right? The twinge of anxiety before the full-blown panic, the growing tension in my back before the pain, right? The building fatigue before the burnout. These things that we would classify, right, as disorders, diagnosis, right, problems, are often preceded by these little whispers. But if someone doesn't know how to listen to the whispers, they will get slapped in the face over and over and over again, right? It's a blunt analogy, but I think we can all understand why we want to actually be better at tuning into our body. Cool? Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about mechanism. Like, how does this actually work? Because this is where, for me, it gets interesting. I mean, it's all interesting, but I just really love kind of breaking down, like, this is what's actually going on in the body, right? So that we, again, have a little bit more of an understanding of why we're doing what we're doing and how it works, right? And I'm teaching this to you, but this is exactly what I teach to my clients, right? I'm not going to go too far into this rabbit hole because most of you have heard me talk about it, but if you haven't, I think it's a hugely important piece of information. So I'm going to give myself 2 minutes on it. Why before how, right? The entire medical system is built on top of, in my opinion, disempowerment, right? I, as the practitioner, determine you have this disease and here's this medication and you don't know how the medication works. You don't know how the symptoms, why you have the symptoms. The amount of times I ask my patients, why are you taking that medication? They're like, I don't know. Doctor told me to. Do you know what that does? Nope. Do you know why you're taking it? Nope. Do you know if it's working or not? Nope. Incredibly disempowering, right? Incredibly confusing. I don't know why I'm having a flare up of my symptoms. Right? It puts people into this mode of uncertainty, right? A symptom flare up could be just around the corner and I have no idea when it could be coming. We talk a lot about nervous system regulation. I've found, and again, there's pretty good research behind this, that uncertainty is one of the most dysregulating states we can be in. Like my brain and nervous system thrive on predictability, right? They do not like uncertainty and unpredictability. So when someone's got these mystery symptoms and they go and see the doctor who refers them to a specialist, who puts them on a medication, who doesn't have the time to explain why, it builds more uncertainty, right? So instead of me saying to my clients, hey, here's this practice that I want you to go and do that's going to help build your interoception. Again, if the next time, like, why are you doing these practices? And they're like, I don't know, you told me to, then that is disempowerment, right? It's not intentional. It's usually, it's well-intentioned, but I really think this is such a critical piece to highlight. We take a little bit of time to educate someone why we're doing what we're doing, then they are the ones that have now this internal motivation and understanding of like, cool, I want to do it because I know how it helps me, not I need to do it because someone told me to. Really different outcome, right? So I'm explaining to you to this, but I would encourage you to take this same model if this is something you share with clients and actually entrust them with information about how their biology works, right? Like trust that someone can comprehend a little of anatomy and physiology, right? We don't have to give them a background in medical science, right? But we can actually trust that they would like to know how their body works a little bit. So the first thing that happens is we have information, right? The other way we can think about this is kind of sensory input. And again, this is coming from both external world and internal world, right? We're going to focus more on the internal because it's often the internal that's driving a lot of the shift that we're going to talk about, right? Let's give a quick example of that so everyone's clear. A car rushes past, right, really close. That is an external thing that drives my heart rate up, right? My brain, is now responding to the elevation of my heart rate, right? So externally driven, but internally kind of mediated. So we're going to focus more on what's happening internally, right? Because lots of different things out there can trigger a range of different responses in our body. My brain is it cares less about what caused my heart rate to increase. It cares more that my heart rate is increased and what could that mean, right? So sensory input, right? This is the kind of raw information, a shift in my heart rate, a shift in my breathing, tension in my body, butterflies in my gut, constriction in my throat, heat, cool, right? Everyone is different. We're going to talk a little bit about these individual differences, but again, I'm not saying these things is like, this is what happens for everyone. This is just a buffet, right? Pick and choose. What's your response, right? How I experience what I would call anxiety is probably different to all of you. It's just my subjective experience, right? So we have this sensory input, which is the kind of raw material or the interoceptive kind of signal. We then have kind of pattern recognition. This is where it gets really important to understand how my brain and nervous system work, okay? We are taking the information And we are comparing that to previous experience, right? My nervous system is like this memory bank. It's like a massive filing cabinet of all the experiences I've ever had. The ones that have been really scary and really big, they got a big red flag on them, right? Those ones mean more, right? So times I was threatened, times that was fearful, right? Those are tagged with a little bit more of like, this is important. Next time we're fearful, we should probably remember this. Next time I'm in a scary situation, how did this one go, right? So I'm taking this raw information, my heart rate picked up, and then my nervous system is kind of like going through that filing cabinet and being like, when are the other times that my heart rate has been up and what was going on then? This is where it gets these like really inbuilt patterns. If someone only associates, right, an elevated heart rate with anxiety and not exercise and not excitement, right, then whenever their heart rate goes up, their nervous system's like, this is absolutely anxiety, right? It's nothing else because it doesn't have any other data, right? And so it's really important that we consider like, there's an interpretation that's happening. My brain is trying to construct meaning about what this raw input, elevated heart rate, short breathing, gut tension, combined with my past experience, right? What has happened in the past. The part of this, it's also just kind of a little cliff note, right? Also, what ties into this is my emotional vocabulary, right? If I call everything anxiety and instead anxiety versus overwhelm versus apprehension versus irritability, it's like there's a lot of nuance there. But if my emotional vocabulary, right, is I always feel this, I'm just an anxious person, this is probably anxiety, it's always anxiety, then I'm going to have a harder time differentiating those sensations, right? Because my brain just always constructs anxiety. So based on the information that's coming in, my past experience, my mind is now putting those things together to construct. We're going to use two words here, emotion or state. I like the word state because many people lack emotional vocabulary or literacy, right? And if everything is like, there's a difference. We could call state, right, being vigilant or being ready. But I would call, fear an interpretation of that level of vigilance, right? But fear is very different to just being ready or vigilant, right? So sometimes people will jump straight to this is this emotion, right? But again, that is kind of tied back to the times I've experienced that emotion in the past. I find it helpful, and clients I work with, is state becomes a little bit more like neutral. It's a little bit like Switzerland, right? Like we're not kind of jumping on, it's like, I'm in between. Like when we construct how I'm feeling in my body, right, as I notice tension in my chest, that is very different to I'm feeling anxious. Can everyone like feel the difference that, right? Even if you say these things to yourself, like I'm feeling anxious, that lands different into your body to I'm experiencing my heart beating faster. I'm experiencing some gripping sensations at my gut, right? Oh, this is dread, right? Labeling and tagging it that, dread, anxiety, fear, not enough, self-doubt, right? Like whatever comes in there, that's now part of this kind of construction of what we should be feeling. And that's going to lead us to what do we do about it, right? Like what is the output or the action that I take? Do I lash out? Do I withdraw? Do I grab a drink? Do I go for a run? You're right? Like, again, what are emotions and states designed to do is for us to notice and take action. So this is the kind of process, right? My body is gathering all this information. It's using pressure receptors. It's using chemical receptors. It's using the vagus nerve as this big highway to send all this information to the brain. The insula, this kind of switchboard, is like, cool, let's cross-reference that with memory. Let's cross-reference that with times we've been in a situation. Like it's gathering that information, it's putting it together so that then I construct this state of how should I be feeling? Like what is the appropriate state for me to be in based on the information at hand? And then that determines the action that I will take, right? And that action could, like this is where we kind of create meaning, right? Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? And what am I going to do about it? Like that is the part where a lot of people think that's where the emotion starts, right? I'm feeling pissed off because of X, so I'm going to send this nasty message, right? But prior to that, 2 steps prior to that, there's all this information coming into the brain, and then the brain referencing past experience, and then it generating this state of like, I'm pissed off, right? I'm feeling frustrated. I am now going to lash out because I feel hurt. whatever that action might be, just kind of painting that picture. So the reason I lay this out is like where we kind of like, we want to get in here, right? And I'm not going to just say to interpret, right? But to kind of like intervene, right? We're not trying to intercept it and stop it from happening, but we're trying to create a little bit of gap between the information, right, that I'm putting together and then how I'm going to act on the world. This to me is like the access point of what we can do about it. So we're going to talk about this idea of like notice it, name it, navigate it, right? Being one of the takeaway tools we're going to talk about today. So I've whittled things down to 3 things that I want you to take with you today: a test, something to train interoception, and then a tool to use, right? Based on exactly what we're talking about. So we're going to go through this in a kind of practical way. But number 1 is, how do we almost assess someone's interoception? There's a great way to do this. Now, there's formal if you have biofeedback, and by biofeedback, someone could be wearing an Apple Watch. They could have a heart rate monitor. They could have a Garmin strap, right? Our athletes typically have these. And the formal version of the test is, I'm going to give you 20 seconds. You're going to count how many heartbeats you notice in that 20 seconds, and then we're going to compare it against the data, right? So your Apple Watch told me your heart beated 14 times, and you told me it beated 18 times. We have an interoceptive mismatch, right? Or you said 14 and it was 14. Great, your interoceptive accuracy is awesome. Now, many of you, and oftentimes, like I work virtually a lot of the time, so like not always do I have biofeedback equipment available, nor does my client often have a pulse oximeter or a heart rate strap, right? So how long does it take someone to find or attune to their heartbeat is the informal version of this, right? I'm going to just do this informally with all of you now, but the way that we generally run this, and again, I'm going to give you a breakdown of to like how to actually do this with clients, right, or for yourself. But if I was just doing a little run through of this, if I asked everyone right now to try and sense their heartbeat, right, I would stop talking. Some of you, the more interoceptive ones in this group, will be like, cool, I've picked it up already. Others will be like, radio silence, right? So then I would say, close your eyes, right? Now we've removed one of these exteroceptive outputs, right? Now my attention is driven inward because I can't see stuff. Can I now sense my heartbeat? And if the answer to that was no, I would say place one or both hands over your chest and wait until you find your heartbeat. So we're adding these layers, right? But the second thing that's happening is I'm timing how long this takes. So if I say to someone, I'm going to start a timer and I want you to let me know when you can feel your heartbeat. I usually give these at about 5 to 7 second increments, right? If they still haven't said anything after 5 seconds, I'm like, all right, close your eyes. I'll give them another 5 seconds. Okay, place your hand over your heart. I'll give them another 5 seconds, right? If they can't pick up on their heartbeat with their eyes closed and their hands on their chest, they have very low interoception, right? So we're using this kind of like a confirmation or a diagnostic, right? So when I have clients coming to me, I struggle with X, I struggle with Y, I skip my meals, I always, it's like, cool, let's check how good you are at listening to your body, right? This little 30-second test we're going to do. And at the end of that 30 seconds, they're like, nothing, right? Radio silence, I think I'm dead, I can't feel anything. Cool, right? Like this needs a little bit of work, Whereas you might have some people that's like, sense your heartbeat. And they're like, got it. Like eyes open, middle of a conversation, they're hybrid. They can pick up on that really quickly. I just want to kind of like share a little practical example with you all. I did this experiment on myself, right? When I first did this, I think when I did this test, it was like 22 seconds or something. So pretty low. I needed eyes closed. I needed everyone in the room to be quiet and no one to move. So I could really I think I can feel my heartbeat, right? Like it was that level. After, I think I did this for about 4 weeks where I just focused on breath awareness and heart awareness, right? Tuning into my heartbeat, sitting with it, 30 seconds, doing that a couple times a day. Tuning into my breath, like feeling my breath and all these different parts, right? Doing that a couple times a day. The end of that 4 weeks, right? Eyes open, no hands on my chest. I can pick up my heartbeat in about 8 seconds, right? Just directing my attention, even though I've got all this other input, right? I can okay, oh yeah, cool. I can feel my heartbeat now. So this isn't like it's going to take years kind of thing. And this is why I ran this experiment for myself. Like I had pretty low interoception. I'm like, cool, I'm going to focus on this for the next month. And it was visible and it was evident and how much easier it was for me to tune into that. Now, the question that's probably in everyone's mind, or maybe not, What good is it to be able to sense your heartbeat in 7 seconds of your eyes open? It's like, that's not really like a great skill, but it's training my ability. What else I noticed in that month? I would notice when I'm hungry, when I'm full, when I'm tired, like my awareness of my body got better, not just my awareness of my heart, right? And they actually did this in a group study, right? Where they measured satiety signals, like when people stopped eating, when they decided to eat, like hunger. And the only thing that they were training them was focus and find your heartbeat and sit with it for a minute, a couple times a day over the next 4 weeks. So we're not doing this to get better at sensing our heart, right? Like that is the access point to get better at reading our body. Cool. So this little test kind of just getting someone to sit and tell and measure how long does it take for them to actually attune, right, or pick up on their signal of their heartbeat. How do we train it? So the two ways, or the two primary ways. Number one, which is wonderful news for all of us that are perhaps interested in the breath, is like when you get better at noticing your breath, like tuning your breath tunes the entire interoceptive network, right? Really like fortunate that the more aware you become of your breath, the more aware you become of all of these signals. So it's just this really high leverage point, right? That as I begin to spend some time doing breath awareness, right? Noticing how my breath is moving in my body, I'm going to become more interoceptively accurate, right? I get better at picking up those signals early and knowing what to do with them just by tuning into my breath, right? But to add to this, to kind of amplify the response, because something we haven't touched on, I'm just going to briefly like touch on, and I have to plug in my laptop before it dies. Right, I picked up the interoceptive signal from the laptop that the battery was low, and we did something about it, right? The other part of this is using my breath to amplify or create kind of contrast, right? So if I sat for a moment and I tuned in and I noticed my heartbeat, right? I got there and I'm like, yep, I'm ready with it. And then I spent 20 seconds breathing kind of quick and shallow and fast. Or maybe if I wanted to amplify that even more, it could be a, right? And then I go back and I tune in and I see what happened. Now we've got reference points, right? It's like it was steady and smooth and rhythmical, and now it's kind of chaotic. I was aware of my heart and the space and warmth in my body, and now it's rapid and I'm tense and I feel kind of claustrophobic, right? So we're attuning to the shift that is occurring based on a change in input. I could do the opposite, right? Tune in, and then I could intentionally start to breathe really slow, really start to kind of like wind the breath down and notice what happens to my awareness of my body, right? Remembering this interoception, exteroception, it's kind of a dial, right? When you change the state of the nervous system through breathing, you're going to change what you notice, right? Oh, I picked up on all the tension in my body. Oh, my back's kind of sore. How long has that been sore for, right? Like you've shifted the nervous system state. The things that you're aware of are going to change. So we can use breath, right, as this little bit of we create a contrast so we can notice the difference. Why is this important? We are wanting to get accurate, right, at picking up the changes, not just awareness of my heartbeat, right? When my heartbeat changes, not just awareness of my breath, when my breath changes, right? So we actually want to train that ability, not just by, again, doing breath awareness, but building that if I breathe rapidly, here's all the stuff that happens. When I breathe slowly, here's all the stuff that happens, right? I'm getting more accurate at reading those shifts. I didn't put it in here, but I'm just going to share it because it's an easy one. The other one is posture. Posture is a really fantastic one, right? If you leave this workshop and you're kind of like, cool, let's see how this stuff works, right? Sit in a nice, tall, upright, open, grounded position. Like take a few moments to really like get in your body and put yourself in a position that feels kind of like open, confident, right? And do this little heartbeat sensing interoceptive awareness. And then round your shoulders, drop your head forward, curl your back, curl into a ball, and notice what happens. It's really interesting. Your heart rate might not change that much, but there's all this other flavor to what you're sensing. You will notice a different interpretation on the same information, right? Remember that we are constructing meaning based on all of the inputs. So, right, my heartbeat, when my posture says we're good and safe and strong, versus my heartbeat when my posture says we're defensive, protective, worried, fearful, is going to generate a very different construct. And so just by this shift in how you're holding your body, you might have a very different construction of state, right? Oh, all of a sudden I'm calling this fear when I wasn't calling it fear before, because now there's more information, right? My posture is telling my brain something as well as my breath and my heart rate and my senses, right? So it goes to show something that I'm not going to dive too far into today, but we can't really separate posture and breathing. And again, just evidence of this, right? If you get bigger all of a sudden, right, you open your chest, right, your breath's going to change. It's going to conform to that new shape of your body. You didn't need to change your breath. It conformed to the change in shape in your body. Same thing, if you curl into a ball and compress, right, your breath's going to shrink to fit that new space. Not because you told it to, because it's adaptive. And so we're changing either breath or posture, but really both of them are becoming the kind of impact, right? You can pull on each of these levers independently. So you can change your posture and keep your breathing the same. You can change your posture and change your breathing, right? These are just kind of different levels of you noticing what changes that response. The final thing here, which is kind of going to be like the tool that we use, right, is the in the moment tool, right? How do I change this interpretation of anxiety when it's happening, right? Notice, name, navigate is going to be this little like mantra that I want you to remember, right? And this kind of builds on the levels that we've already kind of like started with, right? This is like the raw sensations or sensory experience. Naming it does a lot of good for the limbic system, right? Again, the uncertainty of something happening to me versus my chest is tight, right? Naming it, not labeling it, right? My chest is tight versus I'm anxious is different, right? So we're kind of like giving it, we're making it a little bit more concrete by giving it a label, right? That brings in different regions of my brain to make this not this fearful thing, but something I'm a part of. And then navigate is like, what am I doing about it? The kind of action. So like sensation, interpretation, and action. We notice it, we name it, navigate it. I just want to do this little kind of like practice for a moment. I want everyone, I'm going to talk you through it before we do it, okay? What I'm going to ask everyone to do is to generate or remember a mildly, moderately stressful experience you've had in the last 6 months, right? For me, we just flew back from the East Coast to Hawaii with a 9-month-old and a 3.5-year-old. Anyone, I can see lots of smiles from probably some mums in the room that have traveled with kids, right? Like, but when I think back to plane about to take off, 3-year-old losing it because I don't know, the banana wasn't peeled right, right? Like the 10-month-old, all he wants to do is explore and he's squirming in the lap and it's like seatbelts on, right? That moderately stressful experience for me, like that's what I'm going to choose in this little practice. What I want you to do when you think of this is just to notice in your body, whatever it is that you notice, right? So for me, when I do that and I remember that moment, I feel this kind of a clawing, almost like a little gripping sensation, kind of like deep in my chest, right? Not at the surface, it feels kind of like back there. So this moderately stressful experience is bringing up a sensation, which I'm going to name, right? A gripping sensation in my chest. This is often, right? I'm going to veer off just for a moment because it's so important. We have an alarm system in our body, and then our mind tends to create worry as an attempt to solve that problem. This is why many people, you can't think your way out of anxiety, because anxiety is an alarm that is going off in your body. And now we're trying to cognitively or intellectually think, oh, well, this could happen and that could happen. What if I do that? And it's like, none of that is addressing the alarm, right? What we're going to do when we notice where in my body do we feel what we feel when we think of this stress, we're actually going to sit with it. We're going to bring a little bit of soft presence, maybe a little bit of compassion, right? As to let me feel what I'm feeling, right? Not interpret it, not analyze it, not ruminate on it, just let me feel with it. For me, if it's my chest, I would actually place my hands over my chest and I'm going to breathe into that space, right? And I'm going to create a soft kind of presence, right? I always imagine it's a little bit like a hug, right? So what we're going to do here, let's move more to the practical side of rather than just me explaining it. I want everyone just to take a moment to think something stressful that happened in the last 6 months. It's going to be, it can't just be like I was late to work, right? Unless it was like, maybe it was I was late to the airport and I thought I was going to miss the plane and that was going to ruin everything. It's like, I want there to be something there's some weight to it, right? So just kind of like think last 3-6 months, when was a kind of moderately stressful experience that I had? And trying to kind of like remember what it felt like, Not just intellectually, oh yeah, that thing happened, like, but how was I feeling, right? I was sitting in the chair and I couldn't get out, and the plane was about to take off, and both kids are losing it, and it's like, oh, I'm trapped. How was I feeling? Like, oh wait, yeah, here it comes, right? And I start to notice. So I want everyone just to kind of like close the eyes if you're comfortable to close the eyes. And as you remember this experience, notice what happens or where your attention is drawn to in your body. Right? And if I was doing with this with each of you individually, I'd just tell you to tell me where it is, right? We're in a group here, so I want you just to kind of like find where that is. If you can place a hand or both hands over that space, right? Maybe it's belly, maybe it's throat, maybe it's heart, right? Bring a soft presence, right? Notice that the alarm is ringing. And I want you just to let your breath be slightly slower, let your body be slightly softer, and just continue to sit with that feeling, right? The sensation. And name it. What is it that you're feeling? A tightening of my throat, a gripping of my chest, a clenching of my gut, a heat in my back, tension in my head. Right? So we're naming the physical experience, the sensory experience. We're not naming the emotional state that we might tag it to. Oh, this is fear. This is anxiety, right? Just keep it really neutral. And just see if you can hold that soft presence, that soft breath. And some of you, right, this is a quick run through, but some of you might start to notice it begins to dissolve a little bit. Others, it might take a little bit longer, right? So it's not you did it right or you did it wrong. But what we're looking for here, right, is this almost recognition. I'm turning back to the body and saying, yes, I receive the information. Yes, I know the alarm is ringing. I'm aware of it. But when we come down into the body, we name it, we navigate it, right? So slowing the breath, relaxing the body. Oftentimes, the mind, which is trying to construct, what are we going to do, blah, 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 that part's not necessary. That part's really trying to alert us that there's an alarm ringing, right? Like all of the worries, all of the fears, all of the what ifs, right? Is really trying to get me to, hey, there's an alarm ringing in the body. But most people get pulled up into their head or pulled into the external world, right? Because they're exteroceptive, attention's driven outwards. It's like, so this is just this kind of, oh, wait, I'm noticing my heartbeat picking up, right? What if I sat with my heartbeat picking up and just sat with it rather than tried to determine what does it mean because my heart rate, now I'm anxious and I'm anxious because my boss and right? A lot of that technical term, right? A lot of that is because we haven't sat with the alarm. We haven't found it in our body and held it, right? This soft presence of like, here is this alarm going off that's trying to protect me, right? Can I sit with it with a little bit of compassion? If anyone's not familiar, there's a guy called Russell Kennedy. I think he's the Anxiety MD on Instagram. He talks about this beautifully, right? Like we all have these different core wounds, right? I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard. I felt I had to be the person that kept everyone else happy. Whatever it was in early childhood, often this is where that alarm started, right? But we've gone through our life trying to manage the alarm with our mind, right? I'll be able to think my way through this. If I consider all of the scenarios and what could go wrong, then I'll be okay, right? We're not doing anything for the alarm that's ringing, right? We're dealing with the output, right? The downstream of the alarm that's ringing, right? The worry, the fear, the apprehension, the overwhelm, the overthinking. These are all kind of byproducts, the alarm that's still ringing, right? So part of this interoceptive process in quote unquote in the real world, like while we're using it, is actually noticing what's happening in my body, naming the sensation, and then navigating it, right? Navigate, I just needed another N in there, but you could use any word there, which is like, what am I doing with this? But oftentimes, what I'm doing with it almost isn't necessary. If you sit with a little bit of compassion and you feel what you feel and you say, yep, I'm feeling that part of my body and it's coming up and I'm going to sit and relax and breathe with it, it will often stop ringing, right? The alarm will often turn down. And so this process, right, is something that we're kind of like learning, right? Again, you can choose I encourage you to do over the next week a little bit of homework. choose a couple of different memories, a couple of different experiences, and you'll notice, oh, wait, they show up in different parts of my body, right? Me sitting on the plane with my kids is like this chest thing, me a little bit nervous about this masterclass because there's a bunch of people and I really love teaching. It's like, that's more a little bit like down in my gut, when I notice that, so like, it's not what we're trying to do here is get better at pattern recognition. Okay. The more, right, awareness that we build. So like, I'm just going to riff on this for a moment. Let me just come back because I'm not going to draw anything so everyone can kind of see a little clearly. So when we're kind of shifting away from just like, I'm now more aware of my body, great. What do I do about it, right? This is the kind of process that is number one is time, right? We need to practice this, right? But at first, the sensations that you feel will be random. It's like tight chest, lump in my throat, not in my gut, right? The way forward is that we track these sensations, right? So I notice when these sensations show up, right? Is it a time of day? Is it a context, right? Every time before I go into that meeting, my chest grips. Is it a person I'm talking to, a conversation I'm having, food that I'm eating, posture I'm in, right? At the start, it's just information. But as I begin to track it, right, and I start to look for a pattern, it's like, does this same sensation always show up when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling tired, after I've skipped a meal, when I've been pushing too hard, right? What we're trying to build is our own kind of personal like signal map, right? At the start, it's kind of like there's all of this information and we kind of have to sort through it. Like, oh yeah, there's that sensation again, right? So when I talked about the plane and I feel it in my chest and this call and I feel it in my gut, right? I'm tracking and I'm getting more accurate, right? Once I begin to start to recognize patterns, right? Once that signal has shown up enough times, it moves from random noise to like predictable data. And this is where it gets really, really important, right? It's that sorting of like, oh yeah, chest tightness again. Oh yeah, I'm about to go into that meeting. Oh yeah, like what this is building is like, what is the most effective thing for me to do for this experience, right? Because it might be different when I'm feeling the nerves and the heart rate versus the butterflies in the gut. Like I might want to have a different strategy. But to start with, I have to sift through all the raw material and pick out the patterns, right? I might notice that my chest gets tight. And instead of that meaning I'm anxious, it means I've been holding my breath. And I didn't notice I've been holding my breath, right? And so the solve is not, avoid things that give me anxiety. It's notice when I begin unconsciously holding my breath. Because that seems to be the preceding input to me saying, I feel anxious, right? The I feel anxious is a construction on a bunch of information that we haven't spent enough time identifying, right? So I zoom in and I start to create like a pattern, right? The part that I can't drive home enough, right, is that the meaning is not universal, right? It's personal. So you only learn your vocabulary, your dictionary, right, of these signals the same way you would learn a language, right? Through continuous exposure and feedback. You have to learn your like repertoire of this thing means this, right? And the only way we do that is through repetition. Then the final thing is now I've got a little bit of meaning, right? Is what can I do about it? So once I know, the chest tightness is indicative that I've been holding my breath, my response might be, I do a long exhale, right? I notice the tension in my back, and that's indicative that I haven't been, my response is I go for a walk. I do my little 3-minute exercise. I change my posture, whatever it might be, right? We want this kind of personalized like cause and effect of like, if this, then that. When I notice these signals, I do this thing, and that is the fastest way for me to get back on track, right? Over time, and again, this is going to feel like a stretch for some people, right? But over time, we're building this like library of cause and effect, right? When my system does X, I do Y, and it usually helps. The person that, suffers from just unexpected anxiety, right? Now is like, when that sensation comes on, I know the fastest, most effective thing I can do to bring it back down, right? Remove uncertainty. And so it's not just like wait until the reaction happens and now you've got a great way to manage it. It starts to create this kind of feed forward mechanism of my nervous system is predicting and interpreting and getting feedback. And we're getting better at determining like what is the best thing for me to do in this situation, specifically based on my signals, right? What's happening in my body. And so the end result of that is we become way more precise, right? We keep getting these different lessons through feedback until we've got like a really dialed in, I know how to manage all these different things that are happening in my body, right? i.e., I'm better at regulating my emotions or regulating my nervous system or regulating my energy. And so the risk that I see people falling into, right? Like awareness without action becomes overwhelm. There's just more information now, right? Like I'm more aware of my heartbeat, my tension, my jaw, and I don't know what to do about it, right? Overwhelming. Action without awareness is just guesswork. It's random. It's like, oh, I'm going to try and do 4-8 breathing, or I'm going to try and do box breathing, but I don't know why I'm doing it. I haven't built the awareness piece, right? I'm just taking action, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It's not a very reliable tool. But like awareness and action and feedback, right? Of I'm recognizing patterns and I'm trying these different things and I'm finding what works. That becomes this like embodied knowledge, right? Is I really know how to navigate my experience. And so just to bring that all together in a little tight bow, right? Like interoception again is not just like the noticing of the signals, it's like building my personal user manual, right? Where it's like this sensation and I label it, this is what I'm feeling, and I sit with that, and here's how I can navigate that, becomes really different in how I experience the world. It sounds really grand, right? But that is literally like how I take action on the world and respond to the world, like is really determined by this collection of information from my nervous system, how I interpret it, how I construct meaning, and how that informs what I do, right? My actions and my outputs. So interoception, right? Not just sensing, but making sense. Why would we want to get better at improving interoception? It's a meta skill, right? It is the skill or the foundation upon which we build emotional regulation, nervous system regulation, or encompassing both of those things, self-regulation, right? The benefit of why breath is so powerful here is that tuning the breath tunes the entire interoceptive network, right? As does heart rate, right? So tuning in and sensing my heartbeat. So these are our two leverage points. And then as a little bit of a tool, like where the rubber meets the road, right? This idea of notice, name, and navigate becomes, what do I do with the information, right? So that perhaps I can begin to have a different outcome or take a different action, right? If I'm sick of snapping at my kids, right? That being the output, and I get better at noticing, oh, my jaw is getting clenched because my 3-year-old is being a dictator, right? Like I'm sensing my jaw is clenched. I'm feeling, like it's making me feel this way. And again, well, maybe I never felt hurt as a kid. Like all of the other pre-verbal, pre-conscious information from your nervous system is feeding into this. You're not just annoyed that your kid isn't listening to you. There's a lot of other meaning in there, right? But the noticing my jaw is clenching, and that usually precedes me snapping at my kid and yelling and then feeling guilty, right? It's like, now I can take that little course correction. It's like jaw is clenched. Maybe I'm going to tap out and bring partner in, or I'm going to take a minute, or I can take that breath and I can drop down on eye level and I can change the dynamic, right? Instead of, no, why won't you lit, right? It's like, so it's just a little example. I'm a dad, like this is literally happening this morning. I'm like, why? Oh, wait, right? Like I'm noticing my what I call my off ramp, right? I'm heading off regulation. I get a little like, I start to get a little over logical, and I'm like trying to reason with this 3-year-old, and I feel myself getting a little snarky, right? It's like when I now notice that, I'm like, oh, we're heading to drama. We're heading to a clash right now. I am the adult who's learned the skill of regulation, right? It's not up to my 3-year-old to regulate right here. So when I can pick up on those early signals, and this has just been a really like real process for me over the last couple of years, what was, oh God, I feel guilty at snapping at my kid, now let me repair, becomes, I'm about to snap at my kid. Let me not do that, because I can do these things, and I notice this feeling in my body and I sit with that, and I'm feeling threatened and I want it to be this way, and I breathe and some capacity, and I don't snap at my kid, and there's no repair necessary, right? It's like, I know not everyone is a parent, but for me, it's just like, that's how this shows up in the real world, right? Like not just some fancy, like, cool, I got better at interoception. It's like, I have a better relationship with my son, my kids now, right? Because instead of me being dysregulated and overwhelmed and the straw that breaks the camel's back, and then I do something or I yell or whatever might happen, and that requires then I feel guilty and I feel shame, and then I got to repair, and I avoid all of that mess, right? Like, let me just come back to this analogy here, right? Me snapping at my kid is like, oh, I've been off course for a while. I didn't notice the tension in my jaw, the heat in my chest, the racing heart, the elevating level of tension, and I snapped. But now when I just like pick up, it's like, oh, I'm getting a bit sarcastic and my jaw's tense. What do I need to do now? So in 5, 10, 20 minutes, I don't snap at my kid, right? So I just wanted to kind of leave a little bit more of a real example. I'm going to stop talking. And, I know some people maybe have got places to be. I've got a little bit of time. So I'm really just going to kind of open this up. If there's specific areas anyone wants to dive into, if anyone has feedback, insights, aha moments, I got my eyes on the chat box, but feel free to take yourself off mute. Ask any questions that you have. Again, I'll send you the recording. I'll send you a bit of a cheat sheet, just some other tidbits and stuff that'll help kind of implement. But my full 100% encouragement is not just like, cool, I did the workshop, right? Like now let's see if you can, where the rubber meets the road, put these tools into practice for yourself, have some conversations about it, teach some clients about it. And you'll again start to notice like how relevant this tool is for everyone. And again, why does everyone need it? Well, most of us, due to conditioning, culture, social, and or trauma and stress and or distraction and overwhelm, the 21st century, it's like, yeah, most people probably need to get better at this, right? Just because of the environment that we live in. So it's one of those really, really key tools. But space is open. Anyone can kind of chime in if they do have questions. And I need a quick drink of water.
I'll chime in. I don't have a question per se, but I'm definitely excited to try the sitting with and the softening because I I can tell I'm just going through this. I've been trying. I gave my office up to my sister. I've been doing work on my laptop, on the computer, or on my laptop, on the couch, and just I know it's just like all this bad, you know, posture. And again, I'm sure I was holding my breath and again not breathing well. But and so again, every night I'm getting these heart palpitations, and but I've been sitting, I've been doing my breathing, but I've also been thinking, well, is this what it was? Is this what I did? Is this and again, I used to work as a hygienist and I left that. So, I'm just like putting together like, oh, this was the posture I was doing at work. And again, I can just tell like the thinking because it's taking me a really long time to get my heart to to slow down. And so it even just doing that, I wasn't thinking about work, but just doing that, I noticed that because even standing here, it's almost like I'm associating like the computer now with bad posture and bad breathing and heart palpitations. And so, yeah, sitting here doing that, I could just feel my heart rate, my heartbeat dropping, my heart rate dropping. So thank you for that tool. I love that. And I can't wait to share that. This is
It's
great.
honestly, I think you're going to be so, maybe surprised is not the right word, but like that, like sitting with it instead of trying to manage it, right? Like our natural go-to is like, oh, my heart rate's up, I got to bring it down, right? But there's this step in between of just like, my heart rate's up. Notice that, right? Like name it, like my heart's beating fast. And you'll notice immediately your mind wants to be, it's because X, Y, and Z, right? And typically
Yes.
that's where people leave their body and go up into their head. Is it because of X? Is it because of, I can't believe they said that, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, no shit, it's hard to bring your heart rate down because now there's this secondary input, which is like the analysis and the, rumination where it's like, my heart rate's up and you catch your mind going, is it because of, and you go, just wait, just my heart rate's up. Like, let me sit with that. Let me notice it. Let me notice what else, other than my heart rate being up, what else do I notice? It's like, oh, there's a little bit of tension in my shoulders. And like, there's this kind of heavy sensation. And you just sit with that. What I just invite people to be aware of is like some stuff will come up, right? Of like, oh, I remember feeling like this when I was a little girl. Or I remember feeling like this when dad yelled at me. Or I remember feeling this when I didn't feel enough, or whatever it might be, right? And I would argue that is you kind of like, that is the therapeutic aspect of this, right? That part where that comes up is like, here's why this alarm is ringing, because my needs didn't get met when I was 6 years old and I learned a pattern, right? But
Yeah.
as society and culture and learned patterns, right, I've tried to manage that problem with my head. And really, it's just like an unmet need or an old wound or a trigger that's in my body. Now I sit with the body and be like, oh yeah, like I feel that heaviness and I'm okay with it. And I'm just going to give it some compassion and some presence. Like presence is a really key word there, right? I'm not trying to get
Mhm.
rid of it. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
change it. I'm going to be with it. And you'll notice
Yeah.
like oftentimes these other little like emotional triggers or memories like pop up. You're like, huh, I wonder why that's there. And it's like that's the body kind of like letting go of like, here's the alarm that I've been storing up in case this happens again. Right.
Yeah.
So I'd be really
Yeah.
excited to kind of hear back from you and just kind of like how that tracks. That
Yeah.
it's just like sit with it and notice it and be with it. Right. Two
Yeah.
things, right? One, it usually like resolves itself, not because you tried to make it go away, but because you noticed it and actually sat with it. And number two, some earlier things might come up, right? And again, I don't encourage you to try and label why. Oh, I'm remembering that because I'm feeling X, right? There it is. It's welcome. Right? I'm going to sit with presence and it just came up and I'm going to just again like hold that soft presence.
Yeah. I think even you just saying that, I realize that I'm sitting there thinking to myself, why can't I fix this with my breathing? This is you know, I'm working on helping people with their breathing, and I can't even fix this in myself. So that whole judgment, even of like, I'm not going to be able to do this because I can't even help myself. So yeah, so I love that. I'm definitely going to work on
And
that.
and
Thank
just
you.
to like jump onto that last piece, because for so many people, like it'll resonate really strongly, right? I guarantee, but that's a strong word, but I predict or I assume that you probably find it hard to sit down and do your breathing practices. Why? Is because you've built in this like, but I can't even fix my own, right? So like sitting down and being with my breath is now a threat because it shows me where I'm still not enough, right? Like I still haven't been able to do that. So it's like you'll find all these other reasons why you don't have time to do breath work today, right? Like you don't have time to sit with your breath, and that's just your nervous system protecting itself. It's like we don't want to do that thing that highlights this part of it's like so it's like, oh no, I should write that email again. I should rewrite that email. Oh, it's like these funny little things will pop up because that instead of like I can't fix it, it's just like being with it is enough will very much change the aspect of like this becomes a safe practice rather than like another example of where I could be doing better, which is where most of us go, which is
Right.
just
Which is actually
not,
what I've been doing is like, I'm just trying to, I haven't been as good at doing my practice of only doing it when I'm feeling a certain way. So yes, which is just tying into that, like, oh, breathing in this way is an unsafe, you're in an unsafe thing, right? I'm just sending that it's that whole loop or whatever. So
yeah, it's a fascinating little vicious cycle. Thank you, Nikki. Does anybody else have questions, shares, insights? Feel free to just pop yourself off mute.
Hello.
Hey, how are you, mate? Oh, wait, you're back on mute. There we are.
Are we there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got an interesting one. So in this kind of space where I'm transitioning between, what I'm learning right now and currently still one foot in my old role and in this new sort of sector, really in tune with my emotions. And the situation I'm in is I'm so aware of my surroundings and particularly the people I work with, the younger guys in this mining industry where they're just I don't want to discredit anyone or use the word of disconnected, but there's no awareness, there's no consciousness, there's no compassion, and for me, I feel like this. I feel all of their energy and pain, and I'm like in there. I'm trying to go. All right, kid, you got the tools. Use all your power, your breath, and all that. While I feel in my role, I kind of don't fit in, but I'm doing my best. And they're like, take a breath, Mick. You're all good. And here's me in that space going, well, I'm calm, but I'm actually feeding off your guys, and I think about it going, well, how can I sort of be safe in my kind of, so there's that whole introspection and kind of reflection and then noticing all that, noticing the feelings. And I'm kind of go, okay, well, this is where it's stemming from and learning off, because we can all learn a lot off everyone. So I'm trying to pick up on where their emotions are coming in risen and mine. So yeah, it was an interesting one. And I've taken a few good handy notes for this morning session. So it's very good. Thank you.
what I want to kind of like highlight, we didn't talk much about it today, but it kind of like fits in with this, is this concept of co-regulation, right? We spoke a lot about self-regulation, but what you're describing is more of a co-regulation, right? And this is super interesting on the physiological level, right? People's heart rates sync up, people's breath rates sync up, right? Like our nervous systems read off each other. This is most evident, right? You step into a room and something happened just before you walked in, like no one needs to tell you, like, there's a vibe, there's something going on here, right? Like your nervous system is reading the room, right? It's the analogy I use is like it's reading between the lines, right? Like it's picking up on all the information that your cognitive brain maybe doesn't, and again feeding into like, oh wait, I need to be a bit wary, or there's some tension here, or they just had a fight, I don't know what's going on, right? What the to me, like the task or the goal is, instead of, right, what you were kind of describing, and maybe I'm misinterpreting this, but I have a version of this question that comes up sometimes, right? That other people's nervous system, if they're disconnected, dysregulated, up, like is going to pull you out of yours. What if, right, your nervous system was the grounded presence that brings theirs down? And so we tend to go to, right, like, oh, well, how am I going to help that person, or what can I teach them? And below and before all of that is, what is their nervous system getting from your nervous system? And so your ability to be the calm amidst the storm, right? Be the grounded presence is undoubtedly going to impact the nervous systems of the people around you, right? You're sitting, if it's one of you, 50 people, it's like, it's a hard task, right? Like, obviously, like this group energy and co-regulation works like that, right? But the idea of, and sometimes I like think about this a lot, even just with a one-to-one client, right? A client in front of me, super anxious, super panicked. My brain wants to go to like, what's the best tool I could teach them? And in actual fact, what I've found over the last, like 10 years of this is like, the more I just come back into my breath, my body, my presence, my posture, right? How do I create the safest energy? They just like wind down. Not because I'm like, try breathe in for 3.5 and out for 5.5 and visualize this. It's just like, oh, just be the energy, be the presence, be the groundedness that their nervous system needs, right? Because if I'm jumping straight into like, I hope I picked the right tool, my nervous system is now in that like uncertainty, and I want to get it right. And what if I get it wrong? And it's like, whereas it's just like, I'm just going to be the presence, right? That I know I can be, that I've used my own practice for. There is no, like, it can't not impact the nervous systems around you. Like we have very, very robust evidence of that. And so, you're in an environment that's like, this feels out of alignment or disjointed or, chaotic or overwhelming, whatever it could be. It's the best thing is like, notice what comes up, sit with it, right? And just continue to navigate that with like, keep my body soft, keep my breath slow, keep it rhythmical, keep my posture open, right? It's a feedback loop. And it's like the conversation might veer somewhere, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm tense and I'm tight, and my breath's all shallow, because like, oh wait, back to what can I do? Slow my breath, soften my body, open my posture. And so it's not like I did it once and I hope it works. It's just like constant feedback, constant feedback, constant feedback. But I would encourage you to kind of think of like, how big and safe and healthy and like grounded can I make my presence so that does the work, and not me having to go and teach people when, you can lead the horse to water, but some people aren't ready. Like I know the work side, again, stereotype, I'm painting with a broad brush, but you being like, hey, let me just teach everyone right now how to like, let's just all regulate our emotions, probably isn't going to land, right? But if everyone's like, geez, that Mick dude is just like, I don't know, whenever he's around, like I just feel a little bit less agitated. It's like, then that's the invitation, right? They're like, what are you doing? Or why is that? And it's like, cool. Now we've got like an open dialogue. Instead of me trying to teach you what I think you need, it's like you learn from what I'm doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm very in tune with that and really trying to master that area because I can only be where I am at that time in this moment, in this workspace. So definitely want to harness for me, I would say the calm in that storm, because that's in that field. It's where I most feel unsafe, I must admit. And that's great that I know that, but I just need to go, okay, well, there's reason, and just have that awareness. So yeah, thanks, Campbell.
Pleasure, mate. I think, yeah. And again, keep me in the loop, right? I love to kind of like hear how these things just like continue to progress.
Cheers.
Chris, I do a label my inability like Nikki, I think. Keep up with my email, phone responding, because this taking actions. So Chris, I think you're going to notice a lot from like, again, come back to that analogy of if we've been trying to read a book, but we only spend 2 seconds on each page, it's pretty hard to know what the book's about, right? So the more that you actually just sit with the feeling of what you're right now calling anxiety coming up, but again, I encourage you to start labeling the physical sensations of what is happening in your body. The more you do that, the more information you get, right? I use this analogy with breathwork a lot. And so some of you have probably heard me talk about this, but like when you're learning a language, right, at the start, you don't speak the language, right? So if I'm learning Spanish and 2 people in front of me are speaking Spanish and I don't speak Spanish, it is just noise. There is nothing I can gather from, like, there is just noise happening in front of me. But as I start to learn Spanish, right, like I'm going to pick up a word here and there. It's like, oh, wait, he just said dog, right? I know that word. And like, oh, she just said cat, like, and then some context is going to develop. I think they're talking about animals or pets or the zoo. It's like, eventually I can engage in the conversation, right? I can speak Spanish now, so I can participate. A lot of times we're at the point of like, how am I going to participate, right? And we don't yet speak the language. And so what I'd encourage you to think about is like, the more time that I just sit with the information, and again, you're going to get distracted. Your attention is going to get pulled elsewhere. These things are going to happen because of the state of our nervous system and what we're used to and the learned habits. But the more I just come back to like, okay, I'm feeling this feeling and what else is going on, right? How else could I describe the sensation in my chest? What else? The more that you sit with that, right? Now, instead of spending 2 seconds on that page, you're spending 10 seconds on that page and you like get some more information. And so why I'm sharing it like this is I'm hesitant to say, hey, try this before we've got all the information that we need. That information is going to come by spending time sitting with the soft presence, the alarm that maybe is going on in your body, and not doing anything about it, right? Just being okay with being with it. And again, that is not like, well, that's really uncomfortable, so now I'm just like sitting in the discomfort forever. It will become less uncomfortable, right? As you go through this process. So like, we need more information before we can determine like what the best course of action is. I find this so often. People are like, should I do this or should I do that? I'm like, you should get more information. Because if there's a doubt, right, like you probably just don't have enough information. And so how do we get more information? We sit with that soft presence. We notice where it is in my body. We name it, right? We notice it, we name it, and then we learn to navigate it. And that is just repetition. I hope that helps, Chris. Anybody else? Questions, queries? Beautiful. Well, number one, appreciate everyone's presence. Everyone could be anywhere right now, and you guys chose to spend the last hour and a half with me. So that doesn't go unnoticed. So I always just like to extend a little bit of gratitude and appreciation. There's lots of people on this call that are in our breathwork program. Some of you aren't. If you are interested, I just kind of popped a link in the chat. Interoception is just kind of like one piece of this like bigger system of what I call kind of health creation and really like learning a little bit more about like what makes the body healthy. So if anyone's interested in that, check out the link. There's a little video you can watch. I'll email everyone. Here's the recording from today. Here's a little like cheat sheet, worksheet. It is me emailing you. Reply, right? If you got questions, you're like, I didn't quite get this, or I tried it this week and here's some feedback. Like, I don't say this just to say it, but like you guys invested to be part of this, right? Like I now see that as like, cool, like ask me some questions over the next couple of months, right? Like, so the real like proof is in the pudding, so if you don't do it or don't use it, then it's hard to determine whether or not it works. So if I can support you anyway in doing it and using it, use me. Reach out. But otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And
thank you, Campbell, so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harry.
See you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.